Hey there, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Snowpal Software Development and Architecture Podcast. In this podcast, we're going to take a look at one of Snowpal's APIs, the Status API. We have a number of APIs, we've done a few podcasts that relate to the other APIs. This is one of those APIs where we don't have a user interface to share with you. For some of the other ones, we have actually built production apps, web apps, and mobile apps. So we could socialize that with you. But this is one of those APIs. Again, as our API suite grows, we're not going to be able to have full-fledged examples, at least, of all of these. So we provide recipes, SDK, and every other way to help you out so you can consume these APIs. This status API, let me actually share my screen so we can take a look at it to get a bit more familiar. You can go to status-api.snowpal.com to check out our API Postman collection, or you can also go to developers.snowpal.com and check out the product API documentation here. If you're a product owner or a product manager, if you're in the product team, this might be a better place to start before you go to Postman, but we've seen that developers tend to want to take a look at the Postman collections directly. So again, to each our own. We just have support for both of them, so you can pick what works best for you. Let's take a look at some of these endpoints and what is the purpose of this. So our web app and mobile apps have a lot of functionality to manage projects, but we don't have an integration for statuses. So we used to manage statuses, we still do outside of our app. And then we realized, why not build an API so we can actually create an interface, add a feature to consume our API at some point in our application as well. While we haven't done that yet, the idea is to actually create a robust API, much like our other APIs. So anybody else who wants to build any system can actually make status management part of their functionality, which is very helpful because if you think about it, you go to these Scrum calls, you use different tools to manage projects, but you're not actually tracking your status. People, have seen them send emails or share it on Slack and do one of many ways, but not in a very optimal, methodical fashion. The idea behind this API is to actually make that a possibility for whether you're building a microservice or a web or a mobile app. You can use this to implement status functionality. How far you go, you could build full-blown status applications using the API. At least that's the idea. But if you didn't want to do that and you want to add just status support for your API, for your existing applications or the new apps you're going to build, you can use some of these endpoints to provide some of the functionality. But let's take a look at what kind of features it supports. You can, there's two facets to it, the highest level. Let's draw this out so it's actually pictorial. So I'm going to say status API. The first thing we support is you can report status, but you can report status either as the user, the member. Let's say if I'm a developer, I'm reporting status as user. I can do that as that particular user or the team member whose status it is, or I can actually report status and an admin can jot it down, because we've seen that this happens different ways in different teams. Some teams actually have people report statuses directly or updated and updated someplace. Other teams actually have an admin do it in the call. By admin, I mean a project manager or a dev manager do it. So our API, our endpoints support both. So wherever you see as admin, it means you're performing the same action, but you're actually doing it for for a team member. So that's fundamentally the difference. So you will have actually a member ID in the URL alongside the team ID, because we again have support. You can report statuses. A member can report status for as part of a team. If that member is working part-time in multiple teams, they can report status once for each of those teams. Or the project manager for each of those teams can actually take status update for Krish for each of those teams and use the tool, whether it's a web app, or let's say you build a Slack app for this. I think Slack is probably one of the best apps you could potentially build. There are some Slack apps for status reporting, but they fall well short of what actually is truly needed. So you can build something much better to satisfy the needs of your users, right? So that's simply an example of how you could possibly use this. I guess the sun, there's a shadow. Sorry, I should have closed my blinds. My apologies. I didn't forgot to do that. Okay, so that's as a user and as an admin. So what does the status comprise of? There are three parts to it. So let's say I'm gonna pick a different, maybe I pick a circle here, give it a different color. A typical status from what we have seen, at least the one that we've tried different permutations, combinations. This is what works for us. Plan for today. What do you plan to do? At the top of the day, you want to share it. Maybe you have a Scrum call. Maybe you do this on Slack, however you do it. And then you say, we have sessions at Snowpal. Each session is 4 hours. If you're working full time, you have 2 sessions per day, 10 per week. And if you're part timer, you have 1 session per day. Sometimes your sessions can be less than 4 hours as well, depending on the type of engagement you have with us. So let's say there is a session regardless, which is a length of time. Let's call it session 1. And then there's going to be, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. You can have any number of sessions. So I'm going to say session 2. Okay, and up to session N. I want to put a dot here. Okay, so let's connect this. Session 1, session 2, and session N. Bring this down. This arrow can be a little bit straighter. Okay. So those are 3 sessions. And now if you go back here, again, plan for today, what you're working on, certain tickets or issues, whatever you want to call them. And then you define, and then there's free text as well. You're saying, yeah, I don't have a ticket or an issue, but this is what I'm going to be helping somebody on board. So you can report, there's a certain format. We'll not go into the details in this video, but there's a certain format you can follow for plan for today. And then you have sessions. You can add any number of sessions. And in the session, you can add tickets to sessions. You can add other items to sessions, which is again, not a ticket, not an issue, because if it's a ticket, it could be a Jira issue. It could be a GitHub issue. It could be some other issue. But if you're saying I'm going to be working on something else that is not tracked necessarily by a ticket, then there's something called other items. So you can add sessions. You can, add your tickets and have other items to your session while you add the session, or you can do them incrementally. So that's what sessions is. And then the last but not least is block by. I want to draw, let me copy this. I think I should have actually had, maybe I'll use a slightly different color because there are 3 different categories, if you will. And then for this one, let's pick, okay. So this is going to be block by. Ideally, you don't want anyone in your team to be blocked by anybody else, but that's not always the case. So this tracks what you're blocked by. Am I blocked by this other developer? Am I blocked by approvals? Is blocked by being tracked by a ticket, or is it free-flowing text? For admin, I'm not going to draw these circles because I'm just going to draw maybe a dotted line. Yeah, I'm just going to draw a dotted line here. Hopefully. Just remember that all that I'm saying here is an admin represents a user. So they do it for another member, right? They're doing it for another member. But the idea is the same. The type of status, the structure of the status is not going to be any different. That's what this API at the highest level supports. Now, again, the devil is in the detail, meaning there's lots of other nuances. What are the attributes that it supports when you add a ticket? What are the details that you can add for that, provide for that ticket? You can look through the description, let's take a quick look here. Ticket ID, the type, whether the ticket's on Azure, DevOps, or it's on Jira, whatnot, the URL, the description, how much time did they spend, what is the status of those tickets, are they pairing with some other member, maybe there's a member ID, maybe there's a non-member, pull requests, URLs, descriptions of those pull requests, and a number of things of this nature. You can extend this to add custom attributes as well. But the idea is you have a pretty rich set of endpoints associated with this API for you to manage statuses. Imagine creating a Slack app with the API being available, And if it were not to be available, it's going to take your API team all the time, and maybe you don't even have an API team for all I know, for all we know. And if you don't need to hire staff, maintain, manage, and pay your teams. Create a backend team just to get things working, because we have a rich suite of APIs. The idea behind that is you can actually not even have a backend team to get things working. Or if you have a team, they probably have better things to do and bigger fish to fry, so they don't have to actually work on rebuilding or reinventing the wheel. That's the idea behind us publishing these fundamental these APIs as fundamental building blocks. We have SDKs available, so you can go to status SDK, status-sdk.snowpal.com. Currently, our SDKs are available in Golang, but we're expanding that to include other languages. We have recipes published. You can check out those recipes that manufacture examples that showcase how you can actually use this API. We talked about the developer documentation, and then you can go to aws.snowpal.com to go find this API, and within 3 clicks in 5 minutes, you'll actually be able to sign up, subscribe to it. You'll get the API key and the product code, and you can actually start consuming the API. Now, there are multiple ways to license and to integrate this API. One is a standard SaaS-based model where you pay by request or subscription, annual or monthly, whatever works for you. But we have customers who've asked us, hey, can you actually provision this in our cloud infrastructure, be it AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure? Not a problem. We can actually make all of the API gateway, the whole thing available for you. So it's entirely, it's in your environment and we have no access to it. Or we can have, we have multi-tenancy support. So you can use our environment for requests, but we can point to your DB. That's a variation of it. Or even other larger customers ask us saying, hey, what, can we license the API so it becomes part of our DevOps and platform engineering infrastructure, where you have absolutely no control over proceedings, because that's how we want to do it. Not a problem. And then you can purchase upgrade licenses, so you get bug fixes, enhancements, and features. That's our licensing model. So we've kind of covered the gamut. We'll go into the details of these endpoints, maybe definitely in subsequent videos. But this first one, I just want to socialize this API. And actually, you can go to, there's one more place you can actually go to. Let me share that as well really quickly. Go to products.snowpal.com and go to API. And we have plenty of other API documentation in addition to the developer documentation on developers.snowpal.com and the Postman collection. So a combination of all of that hopefully will hold you in good stead in terms of what you actually need to do to integrating this API. With that, I'm going to end this podcast. Thanks and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.